So, some more phrasal verbs today. Phrasal verbs with back. There are a lot of phrasal verbs with back, and you might notice just taking a cursory glance that most of these words begin with, which they begin with reduce, retake, recover, retrace steps, retract, return, remind. There is a reason for this. It's because back very often means one more time or in the opposite direction. So let's have a look then. I think get back to and go back to are perhaps some of the easiest ones with back, because they just mean return. You can say, for example, if you're a teacher, let's get back to the main topic of the lesson. Let's return to the main topic. But you could also say let's go back to the main topic. And of course it can mean physically return in a car or on a train or something like that. I think most people know call someone back as well, which means return somebody's call. And so you can again see the return aspect of back. Now, if we move on to some difficult ones, take someone or something back, or bring someone or something back. The main reason that these are difficult is because they have a lot of different meanings. So, if you take something back and you say, I said something really wrong, I upset someone, and so I'd like to take it back. That means you are retracting your words, you're taking your words back, you're saying that you didn't mean what you said earlier, or you understand that it's wrong or incorrect in some kind of way. So you can take something back like retract a statement and say, I'm sorry, I take it back, I didn't mean it. You can also take something back to the shop, to get a refund or something like that. Maybe it doesn't work, so you decide to take it back. So it can mean physically return. But you can also use this word metaphorically to mean that something reminds you of the distant past. I don't mean remind like somebody reminded me to lock the door. That we would never use take something back. Take someone back actually in that way, when somebody reminds you to do something in the future. I'm only talking about distant past here. So you'll say something like this. You'll say, the smell of paint takes me back to when I was 11 years old, or something like that. It reminds me of when I was 11 years old for some reason. Maybe you smelt a lot of paint when you were 11, but you could say that smell takes me back to when I was that age. And here it means exactly the same as brings me back. You can also say it brings me back to when I was 11 years old. And here, that's why I've written remind here as well. And so it means this, it takes me back. It means it reminds me of my past, or it brings me back to a time in the distant past. Okay, so bring something back is very similar to take something back. You can bring something back to the shop in order to get a refund. You can say that the smell of roses takes me back to when I was playing in my grandmother's garden. But you can also use bring something back to mean reenact some kind of law or some kind of policy that the government had. So you could say, I think we should bring back capital punishment. Something like that, meaning we should reenact capital punishment. We should bring in new legislation in order to bring back the death penalty. So we could use it like that to bring something back from the past and make it a law again. Or we can also use it to bring back a person, meaning to revive a person. So if a person's almost dying and you manage to wake him up and bring him back, then you bring that person back, perhaps from the brink of dying. Set something back. If something sets you back, it delays your progress very often. So you can say we have suffered a few setbacks, and you can say the weather has set us back 3 months. It's set the project back 3 months. You can also say it has held the project back for 3 months. It has been holding it back for the last 3 months, something like this, and then it would mean delay or hinder. But you can also use setback like it cost me. You can say this computer set me back £800. Sounds very informal. I think it's British English. I'm not sure I've heard the Americans using it, but maybe they do, I'm not sure. And it just means it costs. It set me back £50. It cost me 50 quid. Okay, hold something back can also mean stop or contain. So you might say that the army has managed to hold back the invaders at a certain bridge. It means stopped them at that point and held them back, contained them. But you could also hold back a patient. Maybe if a patient is attacking the doctor, he may need to be held back. He may need to be restrained. And here we come on to the third meaning of hold back, which it means restrain oneself. And so maybe here I mean control yourself. Maybe you go to a meeting and you're really angry with what your company has been doing recently, and you can't hold yourself back. You can't restrain yourself. You have to shout at them and tell them what your problems are, what your emotions are. And so it's really about restraining your emotions. If somebody holds themselves back, they restrain themselves. They don't let go of themselves. They don't lose control of themselves. Okay, if you go back on your word or you go back on your promise, you break your promise. And really, this phrasal verb does collocate with promises, your word, those kind of nouns. If a pupil, and I'd usually use this for pupils or young children or teenagers, if they talk back or answer back, that means that they reply in a rude and cheeky way, sometimes in an impertinent way, yeah, but cheeky in an informal language. We often call youngsters cheeky if they're a little bit rude and perhaps a little bit disrespectful. We'll often call them cheeky, and that will often be because they talk back or they answer back to the adult in charge. Okay, if you cut back on staff, you reduce the number of staff that you have in the company. If you cut back on cigarettes, you reduce the number of cigarettes that you're smoking every week or every day. So it's always reduce, cut back. If you try to claw back some money, it's always about money, it seems to me. It's very rarely about something else, although it may be, perhaps, in some situations. Never say never. But maybe your company has been subsidised by the government, but unfortunately the government claw back most of those subsidies in taxes, and it means they take the money back. So it really does mean take back, claw back, but it's about money, and it sounds like they did it with great effort as well. It literally sounds like claws are coming in to take the money back, to claw the money back. So it can be used in a few different ways, but really to retake money, that's the main meaning. Okay, if the economy bounces back, it recovers after a recession or something like that. And if the patient bounces back, then he recovers. He makes a full and speedy recovery. So to bounce back is to recover. If you double back, then you retrace your steps. You go exactly the route which you came. Maybe you suddenly notice on the street that your pockets, you haven't got your phone, so you double back to look for it. Yeah, you retrace your steps and try and find it on the way back. If you look back, this can mean to reminisce. Yeah, if you look back on your childhood, or if you look back to when you were just a teenager, that means you're reminiscing. You're recalling that moment of your life. And so again, very similar to when you say this smell takes me back to when I was 11 years old. You can also look back to that time as well, just reminisce. You could also think back to that time. You can also think back to that moment, meaning recall events from the past. So if I think back to 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I can remember exactly what I was doing. Okay, something like that. If you step back or stand back or pull back or draw back, all of these mean the motion of going backwards. So step back, I think, is very clear. It's like this, step back, yeah? But you might say to somebody, stand back. You might say he drew back a few steps, or you might say he pulled back a few meters. Maybe I've got to say, pull back to me sounds more often. I think it's more often used for transport when a car pulls back rather than a person pulling back, but they're all about the direction. Okay, these are very similar to some other phrasal verbs, but with back as the verb. So if you tell someone to back off, it's just like saying stand back, back off, Or if somebody backs away, it means they take a few steps back. And if you're in your car and you back into a garage, you reverse into a garage. So back into really does mean reverse into. And I hope you remember from a few other lessons these three phrasal verbs. You can back out of an arrangement, which means usually at the last minute you suddenly tell people that you can't go or you can't join in this plan. So maybe your friends invite you to a wedding, but at the last moment you back out. If you back someone up, you support them or defend them. Maybe it could be about defending their position or opinion about something, or it could literally mean in a fight to back them up, to offer support physically. Okay, and if you back down, then maybe you support some kind of position, but in the end you surrender and you back down and you say, okay, you win, and you retract, you take back your words, yeah, when you back down. So maybe first of all you argue, you argue in favour of animal rights in some kind of way, but in the end people persuade you otherwise and you back down and you say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, and you take your words back. Okay, so I hope you can see the main meaning of back and what it brings to all of these phrasal verbs. If you have any questions about these phrasal verbs, please put them under the video, and thanks for watching. I hope to see you all soon.